story boxes. So these are a concept I've designed as part of my research into story immersion, and they are intended to be able to allow you to put into practice the creation of alternate realities through the practical, creative engagement with the world around. At its most basic level, it is a tool for creating stories using objects, and each segment is open for you to put in something that signifies a different component of a story. And for younger kids, or to keep it simpler, there's these versions that have three, where you've got the hero, your problem, your solution. For me, all stories start with character, and it's the character's plight that drives the narrative. And so in creating a story, in the classic Western comic style, we have the top left to bottom right, and so you start with your hero up here. If you wanted to do it a slightly more complicated way, with more story beats and more story components, you could go through the world, the problem, quest, twists, all sorts of different components of a story. So I imagine this tactile engagement with the world and with story components would be very beneficial to people who are perhaps daunted by the idea of writing a story using reams of text and writing words physically. So to be able to just grab objects, put them into these positions, and it helps you build a story, I think could speak to different types of thinking. So then philosophically, not to go too deep into the academic side of it, but briefly, this puts into practice the phenomenological school of thought concept around engaging practically is the way that the world has meaning. So being is acting, being is having agency within the world. Before you start thinking about it and reflecting on it and anything like that, you just do life. So being is acting, essentially. So the vista of your perception, sensorially and cognitively, is always soaked in meaning. It means something, it makes sense, your reality is composed of something that fits. And your practical engagements within that are where you derive how you perceive the story of all that web of meaning fits together. So you're always immersed in a story that's meaningful in terms of the utility of everything around you and its relation to objects around it as well. And I say mental objects as well as physical objects. And everything's tied together so neatly and completely. It's essentially a seamless tomb of awareness. Now, the intricacy of this entangled web of meaning only becomes apparent where there's a lack. For example, let's try this out. What is this object? Some people might know, but I imagine a lot of people won't. And if you do know, pretend you don't. At the moment, this unusual object represents a snag in the web of meaning because there is an absence of where it fits there. And then to bring it into meaning and give it context, we have to engage practically with it. No amount of staring at this thing will give it any more meaning without you actually practically engaging with the thing. Now obviously through a camera you can't do this, but watching another entity that is similar to you engaging with this may suffice. So as I look at it and feel it, I can see that there's a twangy bit, and it's clearly an instrument. So now it fits into the web of meaning and the story network that you've built around what an instrument is and what music might be, and how sounds can be produced. And so the object is no longer just a void in meaning. It is now a thing that fits into the story webs that you've created. So it's at this point where there's a snag in the web of stories that construct reality that the imagination and creative thinking have the opportunity to rebuild a reality for you. And what the story boxes do is they take objects out of their context of the stories that they're wrapped in, and they isolate them and make a snag in the vista of reality for you to then fill with whatever you want. So, for example, if I take this bit of pencil shaving, a piece of string that my cat was playing with earlier, and 5p coin. This is no longer just a pencil shaving, a bit of string my cat was playing with earlier, and a 5p coin. They're outside of the context now in the storybox. So this is Barry, Denise and Jose, and they've got problems to have and solutions to find. And so the objects then, we can use the imagination to map on a new reality for what they might be in the story world. And let's just put them back into the real world. Real world, question mark. And they have their context again. So where in the case of the unusual object, the practical, physical engagement with it gave it the meaning, here the imagination is the hand that reaches, the imagination is the one doing the engagement with it, and that creative muscle being used allows you to reconstruct reality. So the objects in the storybox cease to be what they were prior to your artistic intervention, and they take on a whole new reality. I'm currently pyrographing some designs onto the boxes. I'm pyrographing the labels of the story components in. Why pyrography? Why am I doing pyrography and not just drawing or painting the boxes? Really, I just thought it would be more interesting to do it like this. It's just a different experience for me and a bit more unusual than painting them. So Acorn and Pip in Slough are collaborating with me on this. They're a fantastic small local business, doing children's toys, really, really nice ones, made of wood predominantly. And they're also a cafe serving great coffee and food, so do check them out. But they are also a really good community business, and so they're working with me on these story boxes for these story trails, and so that's why we've got Acorn and Pip here, to help local families engage with the arts and creativity through storytelling and nature. So if you would like a story box, maybe drop me a comment or a message or something. At the moment I'm just making these for the story trail that I'm doing with 5 to 10 year olds over Easter, taking on a little journey through nature, and we're collecting objects and putting them in the story boxes, and then when we arrive at Acorn and Pip in Slough, we'll have lunch and we will pull together the stories that we've made from the objects we've found. I could probably find a way of selling these. I don't have time to run an Etsy store or anything like that, but if you think it's something you'd want, let me know and I'll figure out a way of getting it to you. It takes me a while though, because I am hand pyrographing all the boxes at the minute. I need stenciling out the names because I had a go at doing it freehand and it looks pretty shocking. So stenciled the names and then freehanded the illustrations. There must be a way of getting these to people en masse, but I don't know it at the minute. But if you want one, let me know.